Everyone loves Lunacy, right? It's the lifeblood of the game, from pulling to... well, pulling. It's the reason most of us do our weekly stint in the Mirror Dungeon mines for that sweet, sweet Lunacy reward at the end of it. But how long would it take to get 1 million of it? Well, before we ask that question, we need to set ourselves some control variables so that this experiment is, in theory, repeatable for anybody to try out themselves. Or just to calculate the maths of, I can tell you right now, anybody claiming to have reproduced this strategy completely legitimately is lying to you, or you need to immediately ask for the winning lottery numbers in 16 or so years' time. The two control variables for the experiment are thus. All Lunacy from other sources has already been claimed and no more will be available. This means that every Canto is complete or won't be completed, every sinner is uptied to their Lunacy reward, or the player simply only has the base IDs, and that PM is basically done entirely with the game. The 300 weekly Lunacy still comes in, but PM won't run any events or make any more bugs that require abnormal amounts of Lunacy to fix. And secondly, the player is starting from 0. This means 0 Lunacy, modules and boxes. We'll assume a cap of 150 in Keflin though for convenience's sake. With these two laid out, let's get into the maths of how long it would take to do for a free-to-play. For those of you who don't know, allow me to explain precisely how you get Lunacy in Limbus Company, or at least the ways that matter for the purposes of our calculations. The two ways that matter for us are the weekly mirror dungeons and the 300 compensation Lunacy you get after maintenance each week. The compensation Lunacy is fairly self-explanatory. After each week's maintenance, you can claim 300 Lunacy as a thank you for waiting. This is the baseline, which needs no more effort than simply logging in and claiming what's waiting in your inbox. Mirror Dungeon Lunacy is slightly more complex though. Each week you get 3 Mirror Dungeon bonuses, which, when you claim them, reward you with 250 Lunacy and some additional Battle Pass points per bonus you claim. This means that, at max, we can claim 1050 Lunacy per week, following the control variables we've established. But what does this work out to in actual physical time? Well, we can work this out rather simply. We make 1050 Lunacy a week, so we need to divide 1 million by 1050, giving us 952 point some amount, which we need to round up to give us our final total of 953 weeks. This is roughly 18.2 years. I don't think I'd be criticised for calling this unviable. It was at this point that two different ideas crossed my mind, one quick and one that will take us far longer to work out. So let's explore the quick one first and I'll get into the second one later. There are methods for gaining Lunacy that don't involve waiting for the game to give us things. If we pay money, we can remove the maximum loot in one sitting and replace it with a new marking criteria. How much real-world money would it cost to become a millionaire in Limbus Company? The store sells Lunacy for a range of prices, so our first task was to calculate the relative efficiency of each of these choices, resulting in this table here. Immediately there's an obvious most efficient choice, the monthly Lunacy batch. In terms of pure Lunacy per dollar spent, which means for myself it'll be even better value on account of using pounds, it's the most efficient. But it does have one minor drawback. It takes a full 30 days for all the Lunacy you receive from it to come in. Now, compared to the 18.2 years that our prior free-to-play method would have taken, this is a drop in the bucket, but it's still a point of contention. So we need to determine two values, the amount of money it would take to become a millionaire over 30 days, and the amount of money it would take to become a millionaire instantly. We can calculate this by dividing the million Lunacy by our relative efficiencies, giving us two totals. $2,300 to become a millionaire over 30 days, and the grand total of $8,260 to become one immediately. This is, as of my writing this, considerably out of my price range. And if I had a sponsorship at this point, I'd probably cut to them as a tongue-in-cheek joke, but perhaps unsurprisingly, I do not. I do have the membership system, for which you'll find a way to sign up after you hopefully subscribe to the channel. Becoming a member or even simply subscribing would allow me to eventually fund putting stupid ideas like this to practice, or actually spending money on tangible things to help improve the channel. The money could go to that too. Still, there's one more route that we need to explore, and that involves changing the definition of millionaire slightly. Up until now, we've been looking at how long or how much it would take to become a millionaire in terms of Lunacy, but that's not the only measure available to us. No, there's one more metric that exists, and that's Battle Pass points and levels, and shards, but they're far more RNG dependent and are essentially just Battle Pass levels in a trench coat. Now our maths gets far more complicated, because there's no obvious weekly cap to the amount of Battle Pass points you can get per week. We're going to need to start talking about healthy and unhealthy schedules. For the sake of experimentation, we're going to be creating two categories, a normal person and a dedicated Limbus Company player, aka an insane person. These will determine the amount of time that's available to us in a day, giving us an idea of how many Keflin modules would have to work with as our maximum. Our normal person is going to get the following criteria. They must at least get 8 hours of sleep a night, they make 3 meals a day which take 30 minutes on average for each meal, and they work a standard 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday, which they only get a 1 hour break in the middle of. This will severely limit the amount of time available to us, meaning the optimal value may be lowered or may not for reasons we'll get into once we've started to work things out. Now, what about an insane person? Well, they can get whatever the optimal value of sleep is per night. This can be as low as 4 hours, although it's going to be higher than this. They eat a meal a day, which they can multitask while playing Limbus Company, and finally they don't work a job that they can't play Limbus Company during, which either means that they're unemployed or a YouTuber. This is essentially going to be our perfectly optimal player, as there'll be no modifiers that will get in the way of us completing things for points. So before we get into using our player models, let's quickly work out the optimal activity will be for gaining these points. There are two ways to get points in Limbus Company: weekly bonuses and mirror dungeons. So our immediate question is doing our weeklies actually optimal? The daily bonuses are as follows, giving 2 points each: making a module, clearing a excavation, which gives the reward once for each, clearing a stage 2 times, and finally defeating 2 enemies. The weekly bonuses reward 4 points each and are clearing 5 excavations of each type, giving a reward once for each, clearing any stage 10 times, defeating 100 enemies, and finally entering the mirror dungeons 1 time. So our reward for doing 5 excavations in a week, as in once per day, is a total of 28 points. Now how much does this cost us? Well, the cheapest excavation of each type costs 2 modules, giving us an efficiency of 1.4, meaning that for every module we put in we get 1.4 points out of it. Now, how about mirror dungeons? Well, the first 3 mirror dungeons you do in a week give an additional bonus of 45 points, adding to the 30 points that you get as a baseline from doing mirror dungeons. The cost of a mirror dungeon is 5 modules, meaning that we get the efficiencies of 15 and 6, with 15 for the first 3 done in a week, and 6 for every one done after. So, without a shadow of a doubt, I can say that doing your dailies and weeklies, other than accidentally as you complete mirror dungeons, is not mathematically worth the cost. So now that we have our efficiencies, let's work out how many modules we can actually make at most per week. It's time to use our schedules. Energy in Limbus Company recharges at a rate of 1 every 6 minutes. This means that we get 10 energy an hour, or a module every 2 hours. However, this doesn't immediately kill the efficiency of our normal person for one simple reason: we have a buffer of enkephalin that we can fill up first. We said earlier that we were assuming an enkephalin max of 150, which we can use to provide us with a little bit of delay when it comes to our optimal strategy. It takes a full 900 minutes, or 15 hours, to fill up this buffer. So how does this factor into our schedules? Well, let's take a look at our suboptimal schedule to see how it would affect things. Initially, we can take a look at sleep. Our buffer of 15 hours means that 8 can fit perfectly fine provided the normal person makes all their modules before going to sleep. We can cross off meals in a similar matter, as it would only generate 5 energy in the time it would take us to prepare meals. What about a job then? Well, 9 AM to 5 PM gives us a block of 7 hours. Yeah, this still isn't enough to make a dent in our buffer. Even if you line up every blockage back to back straight from sleep to work to making meals, or some variation on that, we only just suffer inefficiencies. And it's only about 5 minutes worth of wastage. So it would take 4 days straight of suffering these inefficiencies to see any wastage, which would be solved by simply being 5 levels higher. So with that out of the way, we can ignore schedules entirely, as regardless of somebody's dedication, there won't be any loss to module production efficiency. So how many modules do we actually get in a week? With some quick maths, we can work out that we get 83.77 modules per week, or 16.75 mirror dungeons. This doesn't work over long periods of time, because rather obviously we can't spend 3/4 of a mirror dungeon. So instead of working with singular week blocks, we'll be working with blocks of 4 to remove the margin of error. This gets us the total of 67, or 12 boosted mirror dungeons and 55 non-boosted mirror dungeons per 4 weeks. So how many points do we get per 4-week block? After calculating our totals, we get 2,718 points every 4 weeks. This means that it'll be 1,472 weeks until we hit our million, or 28.2 years. So, is it over then? Have we hit our limit? Is it easier to become a millionaire in Lunacy than points? Well, there's one more thing I haven't talked about yet, and that's energy refills. At any point you can spend 26 Lunacy to refill energy completely up to 10 times a day. And considering we no longer care about Lunacy, how many additional modules do we get per week? Well, using our prior calculation of 1,050 Lunacy per week, we know we get about 4 refills per week, or about 30 additional modules. This makes for about 6 additional MDs, or roughly 727 more points per week. How does this affect our wider total? Well, using Lunacy refills, we lower our time until a million points from 28 years to 22, saving us 6 entire years. This is, well, it's still atrocious, but it's not as atrocious as our total was before. But before we call it, let's calculate one more thing. If we're already Lunacy millionaires, how long would it take for us to become Battle Pass point millionaires? We can now safely assume that we gain the maximum number of refills a week at 7 per day, giving us 70 a week. This works out to be 525 additional modules per week, or 105 more mirror dungeon runs every week. Over the course of 4 weeks, this gets an additional 12,600 points. This rather clearly blows the earlier timings out of the water, giving us a new total of only, in extreme inverted commas, 5 years to reach the 1 million points. How much lunacy would this actually cost though? Well, our refills consume 1,820 lunacy per week, which is only offset by 1,050 lunacy per week from our gain. So over the course of 5 years, we lose 201,070 lunacy in the process of chasing our final goal. So with all that worked out, what are my final thoughts for becoming a millionaire in Limbus Company? Well, I personally wouldn't want to go for it as a free-to-play. Limbus Company may be lasting for at least another 10 years, but I wouldn't want to spend all of that only playing through mirror dungeons over and over again. But will I go for it through money? Well, maybe. The day that this video was uploaded, if you're not a member and got this video early, I'll be streaming a few mirror dungeon runs, and all donations during that stream will go towards a total. If the total reaches the 2,300 that we need, I'll become a Lunacy millionaire for you all. And even if you don't want to throw money at me for a silly goal in a video game, please consider liking the video and subscribing. And if any of the maths I've done in this video was off, feel free to comment your corrections in the comments below. It helps out the channel a bunch and allows me to continue to make videos like this. I've got an insane dream to try and reach 1,000 by the end of this year, which if we continue going at this rate we may actually reach. But with all that said, thank you to the members who directly allow me to make videos like this one. Silver William at Nugget tier, Maydev at Librarian tier, and Mac at Sinner tier. So with all that said, good morning, good evening, and good night. Please nobody attempt this, but if you do for whatever reason, join the Discord and submit proof of how far you get. I want to see just how insane some of you are firsthand.